video this morning on the way down to the orchard talking about sort of a review. Was the homestead successful this summer? And with the heat and the drought, I was very sure we would get nothing out of our garden. And yet there's a latter rain, which is a concept that is biblical, which means the after rain. And this is our raised bed now. This tomato, it's getting so heavy it fell over. I propped it up yesterday, and we had the big storm last night and it just fell over. But right behind it, well, first off, let me just go around the bed. This plant that looks all dried out right here is a Swiss chard plant that's growing. Hey now, it's growing so many seeds right here, and I have harvested them, and then some of them have fallen into the bed and had grown up, but then something came along and ate the little baby plants. So I will get more Swiss chard out of that, and that plant now is going on its second year, and it's putting out leaves again after flowering and seeding up. And then this cucumber is just going gangbusters. One of the reasons is someone gave us rabbit manure, and a pastor put it in here. So there's a cucumber right in there. He and I have been eating cucumbers since it started producing fruit. And I could be making pickles, but I'm not the best pickle maker. And I will if I have to, but it's just, I enjoy eating the fresh cucumbers like every day on salads and everything else. Now, we've got our passion fruit growing right here. This is wild. It comes to the end of every summer. We didn't plant it. I do have some tomatoes on the tomato plant, and I've got them in the bags because the stink bugs attack them. And I'm trying to protect the fruit. And with all this rain, these tomato plants are going to start growing bigger too, and they're kind of intermixed. The potatoes are done. I did a picture of the potatoes. I think I did a video of the potatoes. The potatoes did fine this year. And then I wanted to show you the greenhouse because I started out this summer and actually put screening up on the walls. Here's the screening with the help of Cindy. And then her husband let me buy from him this shade cloth that's up at the top that kept the sun from getting too hot in here, let air go in and out, and did a decent job of keeping bugs out. So I thought I'd do a little update of the greenhouse for y'all. And right here is broccoli that is coming back. The drought had really done a whammy on the broccoli. It really hadn't produced any heads or anything, but I put rabbit manure in there, and it's starting to leaf out a lot, so I'm actually picking those leaves and cooking with them. We had that for lunch today in a scrambled egg dish I made. Then here's some tomatoes that are starting to flower. And then next to it, dill plants, some cabbages still left. I made sauerkraut from cabbages that I grew in here earlier in the summer. This is the amaranth, which has kind of gone crazy. I'd actually like to move it out of the greenhouse because I never intended for the amaranth to take over. So once it starts seeding up, I will take the seeds and I'll just put them in other parts of the property. But the amaranth plant is very happy in here. Then there's another tomato plant that produced about 2 tomatoes earlier, and then the drought hit, so it's recovering. A basil plant I planted after the drought. And then right next to it are Brussels sprouts that we managed to nurse through the drought. There have been some of the empire or harlequin bugs on here, but I've caught them. I've killed them before they could do a whole lot of damage, and so there's little teeny Brussels sprouts growing on the stalk. And I did put rabbit manure in those plants, and so they're doing okay. Next to them is another cucumber plant that was viciously attacked by bugs earlier in the spring, and I've been pulling off bits of the plant that died and bits of the plant that were damaged by the stink bugs in here, and it's starting to fruit up. And right next to it, this is a volunteer sweet basil plant. There were sweet basil all through this bed last year, and I wondered if it would come up again, and one of them did. And next to it is a very, it's like a 3-year-old oregano plant. And that oregano plant actually had a baby oregano plant in the bottom part of the greenhouse, and we dug it up and gave it to my daughter. So she has that plant. Then more passion fruit. They grow out of the ground here, and I just let them grow. Then we have a parsley plant here, and some strawberries that are coming back. A squash plant that's just now starting to put a little teeny fruit on. Some more cabbage, and I took the cabbage heads from these stalks, but if you leave the stalk, it leaves up, so we're going to eat those cabbage leaves. And then here's another cucumber that's really struggling. I need to get the rabbit manure in there for it, but it's growing. And there's some, some strawberry back there. And then I thought you guys might like to see what's in my water bucket. There was a big frog in here, and now we've got tons of tadpoles. So I'm not scooping them out when I scoop the water out. But the greenhouse has done pretty well. I'm happy with how the screen worked, with the shade cloth. That worked really well. And the plastic, there's just a little bit of plastic up. We took all the plastic that covered it in the wintertime off. But the plastic worked well too to keep the bugs out, and stuff has grown in here. We're eating those little Brussels sprouts. I've started picking them and sticking them in things like stir fry. So it worked okay, and this is just some fence panels covered with plastic and screening. So it's not a high-tech, temperature-controlled greenhouse. And what I'm doing right now is got you guys so up close. I'm locking the door of it. There. Right here's some tomatoes. They're indeterminate, so they're getting really tall. Then we have some figs that are older. And last year, I actually trimmed the figs back. I didn't know you had to prune them. Once I pruned them, they started to put on fruit. And I think the deer have eaten some of the fruit on these guys. But there's still a little bit left. And if there's enough, I will make jam. So there's the figs right there. And I believe they're ripe when they're brown. We've only gotten a few ripe ones in the past because the plants would wait till the very end of the summer to grow. But this summer, they all started growing earlier, and so I have hopes we'll get some ripe figs off those. And yeah, the garden is overgrown, lots of weeds everywhere, a lot of passion fruit vines everywhere. The walking onions did fine. And then this is one of the beds that, here, let me show you the progression. So this is what I do to kill all the weeds in the bed. I'm sure I've talked about this in other videos. I put the black plastic down, leave it there about 2 weeks, and it kills most of the weeds. So then this bed, I did that with, and then I planted watermelon, regular squash, and then another watermelon back there. And there's 3 collards plants that someone gave me. I think they're collards. It might be cabbage. And I planted them in the drought. So they barely survived that. And since I put rabbit manure on them, are you seeing a theme? And then we had rain. And so the plants in there are actually growing. The stuff on the sides, of course, is weeds. There's a tree and some grasses that I need to take care of. I still have plastic to sort of keep the weeds controlled there. And then the really green leafy stuff is wild violets, and they grow in a lot of these beds. So that's what it looks like when you just newly get plants in there. And then this one is pretty mature now. We have peppers that a friend bought the bedding plants for me, and they've been producing banana peppers since I got them in the ground almost. I've got a collard that's been there since this springtime, and the squash plants, there's like 6 squash plants, have produced some squash, but it's been a struggle with the drought. They didn't really grow. And then here's a theme again, rabbit manure. The plants got much stronger and bigger, and they're starting to fruit again. And then the rain, of course, will help them grow. And I've been out there personally picking off the squash bugs and the stink bugs from the squash plants, because there were more squash plants, and a lot of them that were littler, weaker, died. We also have a kind of a vine borer that will get in the vine and tear it up. So they've done okay, and I think we're going to get more out of them. I'm happy with that. These garden beds are working well the way we've planned using them. Now, some of them we haven't used at all. This one is one. It's got a lot of the fennel that grows in it, some garlic, and then the violet plants, which I'm okay with the violet plants. I'd rather have them than some other weeds. And then this is the kale bed. I have cardboard up the middle just as a walkway, but the kale almost died off during the drought, and then drought end, the kale is coming back nice and strong. And I've been dehydrating. I think I've dehydrated it 3 times already. I mean, this isn't okay. I know there are people who grow kale and the leaf is as big as their face or their head or their arm. But to me, in this bed with this soil that really wasn't very fertile, and we've been working on it for a while, this is a pretty good return. And I need to what? Put rabbit manure in it. I think the plants will get even bigger and healthier. So I am happy with this. We've been eating these kale greens all summer long, and I always like having at least one green to put in stir fry, to put on salads. Just, it's good for your guts. It makes you healthy. All right, so this bed recently I harvested all those potatoes out of, and so I redid the soil in here with, again, rabbit manure, with peat moss and some compost and some dark dirt that we had bought from the city. And so I replanted those beds, and there are squash plants coming up now in there. Let me show you that. Nice. Right up and close. See if I can do that. Make sure I get the whole plant in there. But the squash plants are coming up, and they're a kind of squash that's a little, I call it a pity pat. It's just a little white squash with rounded edges. But it's supposed to mature in 59 days. That's only like a month or 2. So hopefully we will get some those out, some of that out of there. I also planted some peas in the back and some green beans. So hopefully we'll see them come up. And then I planted just recently sweet potatoes. I actually got them to grow slips by just keeping them in a dish with water in it. And they started to grow the slips. And so I just planted the whole potatoes in there. And so I'm hoping to be able to harvest some sweet potatoes a little bit later on. So excuse me, sorry. I think our garden's done okay this year. All right, I gotta go. Thanks for watching. Shalom.